Conversations with Garmamie. Our guest is Stephane Damour. How you doing, Stephane?
Pretty good. How you doing?
I'm doing good, man. Tell us a little bit about your history in the martial arts and combat sports.
Okay. So I started martial arts. I'm 50 now, so I started martial arts when I was 4 years old. I started with the patron. They had a judo instructor there. I spent about 2 years, 3 years doing judo. I did tournaments there, won medals, and then I was participating at the patron because I was going to their summer camps. So it was kind of like a natural transition for me. And then once that was over, I wanted to continue my martial art training. So we lived in Vanier, me and my mom, and I always, bike ride close to the Ontario Jiu-Jitsu school. I think that was the first one that they ever had in Vanier. That's when Jean-Yves Thériault was there and everything else. So I signed up and started doing jiu-jitsu there for 2, 3 years. And then after that, it was, I got the Kung Fu bug. So I stayed up late one night and watched Return of the Dragon. And I got the Kung Fu bug. So the next day, I opened up the yellow pages and found a Kung Fu school, which was Patnos Martial Arts, and spent till about 14 years old with them. And then as a kid, you get other interests, sports and whatnot. So I started doing different kind of sports, baseball, soccer, and really fell in love with football. And I think the reason why football was because I'm a New York Giants fan. And at that time, Joe Morris, which is a short guy like myself, and then after that was Dave Meggett, really kind of like, gave a hope for little guys to be able to play football. So started playing for my high school, Charlevoix, played city ball, and then went out and tried out for the Sooners and made the team. And that year, we won a national championship. That was the last time the Ottawa Sooners, the junior team, had won a national championship. So by that time, being 5'8", I was bigger because I was playing football. I had to put some mass on. 5'8", 210, and not running like the wind. There was no chance for any kind of, hopes and dreams of a young Vanier kid making the CFL. So just at that point, I was trying to find myself. And then I went to the movies with one of my childhood friends to see Dragon, the Bruce Lee story with Brandon Lee. And it brought back all the memories that I had being taught by Cjo Jacques Patnaud and at the Patnaud's Martial Arts School. So the very next day, I walked right in and signed up and committed myself. And I mentioned that to Cjo at the time and Linda, that I'm here for good and wanted to own a school. And so I committed myself for the next 15, 17 years with them. I was in my early 20s, and I went from just being a regular student to being an assistant instructor, to getting my black belt, opening a school, getting my Sifu level from Cjo, and did that. So once the MMA came more and more mainstream, it's something that I wanted to branch out into. And it's something that I wanted to go on my own about it. So I made that decision to go on my own, which was very scary because, the Patnaud Martial Arts organization, they have a lot of schools, they have a lot of different mentors and different specialties. So it was a big step. And I knew that I was going to lose some friends along the way because, you're going in a different direction. And for me, I knew that it was something that I wanted to do and to explore. So prior to leaving, I knew that I needed new mentors. And I had the opportunity. There is a martial art convention every year in Las Vegas, which is kind of like a business convention for martial artists, martial arts school owners, where we to discuss many different topics and to kind of break, the hours and hours of just, theory or whatever they're talking about. They do training seminars. So that year, they had Matt Hughes, which I was a big fan of, and it still is. I've met Matt a few times. He's a really nice guy. And Ricardo Laborio. So I met Master Laborio and went back and forth and talked. And he talked about Dennis Kang and Mark Bocek because they were, at the time, Canadian ATT fighters. And he says, we have an affiliate program and we don't have any representation in Canada. So I said, okay. So I kind of put it in the back of my head because I did want it to go on my own. And when I did make the big leap, they were the first person I called and went down to Florida and started my coaching certification with them, going back and forth, spend weekends, weeks, learning their curriculum and learning the way they teach and whatnot. It was really an eye-opening at that time because I'm a little guy coming out of Ottawa, and then you're going there and you're sitting and shadowing the coaches and learning and training and getting my butt kicked. And that was like, I still remember we're working an Ichimata defense off a single leg, and this guy from Texas just threw me across the ring. I thought I broke my ribs, and even Master Laborio came rushing. He's like, "Hey, Stephane, you okay? You okay?" And I said, "Yeah, just give me a second." But there was a lot of these kind of experiences. And then at the same time, you're on the mat and you're being coached maybe by a guy like Cole Miller or Jason Kelly, or, you had just steps away from you, Thiago Alves doing pads. I mean, the environment on its own was surreal. I had to get over that first, because like you see these people on TV and these are stars, and now they're being mentors. So it was I did that. I did their whole coaching certification to the point where I was the only, and still am the only certified ATT MMA coach under Ricardo Laborio. There's no other Canadian in Canada. So it's something I'm very proud of. But I knew that the curriculum on its own, I knew that there's more deeper learning, and there was continuous learning. And then that's something that is one of my theories is you never stop learning. I don't care how many black belts, if you're grandmaster, you cannot stop learning. The day you stop learning is the day you go into the ground. That's my philosophy. And the ATT headquarters, like Conan Silveira says, it's ATT University. It's a learning center for pros, for everyone. So for me, I didn't want to stop learning. So I had learned no-gi jiu-jitsu but on the approach of the MMA, and jiu-jitsu was something that really was keen for me. So because I did wrestling in high school, I played football, so judo, jiu-jitsu, like grappling to me was something that was very natural. So I wanted to take it further, but I didn't want to do it the wrong way. I didn't want to go out and put on a black belt or put on anything and pass myself as a gi jiu-jitsu expert when I was not. So I didn't want to, like that term, the McDojo or anything else. So I called Master Laborio. I said, who do you recommend, to bring up, send down, who I can work with? And he recommended Mark Bocek and Dennis Kang. So I approached, there was no preference. I just didn't know either. So I called Mark first, and he came down and did a seminar, and it was amazing. Mark lives in Toronto. So I was looking for not only someone to help me launch the BJJ gi curriculum in MAFA, but a legitimate mentor, like someone you cannot go, well, yeah, the lineage is kind of iffy and whatnot. No, Mark is legit. He's a legit MMA fighter, great person. And so he did the seminar, but I realized right away that I said the logistics of having him come in often is hard because he lived in Toronto. He was still very active in UFC at the time. So, the expenses of bringing him in would be very expensive. So I decided, I called Dennis Kang, and at that time he was coming in for a Rec MMA show. He was being one of the special guests for one of the supplement companies he was sponsoring, or they sponsored him. So we met up, we hit it off right away. Dennis is, I don't know if you've never had the chance to meet Dennis, but he's one of the most down to earth guys and very technical. I mean, he was one of Marcus Suarez's black belt, and Marcus Suarez is like the godfather of Brazilian jiu-jitsu in Canada. So the legitimacy of Dennis was right there also. So at the time, we did the seminar, we spoke and everything else. And I laid out my plan. I said, look, I want to bring in someone legit to launch and then create the foundation for GBJJ in MAFA. And he said he was on board. So we started where I was going up to TriStar, because he was training out of TriStar at that time, and doing privates, because I had to get ahead. You know, I had to be ahead. I had to train, and I had to continuously learn. And then we started once a week on a Saturday. He was teaching. And even though I was the head instructor, I went and lined up with my guys and put on my white belt like everybody else. I said, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this right, or I'm not doing it at all. So I earned my lumps like everybody else, and especially with the young guys on the mat, they want to choke out the coach, you know. So it was very challenging for me sometimes, because, you know, man, I'm going to have to tap. This is one of my students. But it was a good process because it made me more humble about it, you know. So we did that, and Dennis went from once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week. And then as his career in MMA started slowing down, he moved to Ottawa, and we had Dennis Kang for 4 to 5 years teaching full time at our club. So that was something else, in the sense of, you know, went from no gi to one of the higher ranks, or I think he was the highest rank at the time in the city, the highest ranked black belt. So he went from 0 to that in overnight. So that was a great thing. He set the groundwork. I mean, without Dennis, I mean, the gi jiu-jitsu program would have never launched. So he helped the foundation of that. And then he got a business opportunity in Korea. So he moved there. So once I learned that he was going to do that, I, you know, was still going to ATT, still training. This is not stopping. You know, this is always continuous learning. Even though I had Dennis, I'd still go to ATT, still train, and started a good relationship to now. I mean, he's my mentor with Marcos Pahompa de Mata. And I said, you know, at that time, I approached him and I said, look, Dennis is leaving. I need someone to be my mentor and to provide me a curriculum and structure and guidance and everything else. So he agreed, but he gave me one stipulation. Is that at that time I was a blue belt 4 stripe, and he says, I'm not going to even consider you to be promoted for the next year because you need to relearn my system. So I was like, great, okay, you know. I've never been from that school of thought, you know, like where you see the IBJJF requirements and they say, well, you know, if you've been this rank for so many years, you are due your belt. The guys that are my mentors, if I would bring that up, oh my God, I'd wait forever. You know, they say, oh, well, you were due next month. Guess we'll wait another 5 years, you know? So, you know, Marcos Amata became, and it still is my mentor. He comes in 3 to 4 times a year. We do privates together. I go down, and you know, and then we bring all these other coaches and fighters from ATT.
Well, that was an excellent introduction and summary. Thank you very much for that. There's so much there that I want to ask about, and I'm going to try to go back to some of your points. First of all, you're from Vanier, so big up Vanier. You know, we got to shout out to Vanier, of course, which is awesome. And of course, the Patno Gym. You know, of course, I'm a big fan of them and their system and their fighters here in town and so on. But I wanted to ask, because you touched on some really, really interesting points, and I know we have a set of questions that we want to explore. That continuous learning that you speak of is just awesome. Can you expand on that and how you kind of, was that something you just always had, or was it something that you instilled in yourself over time? Kind of elaborate on the need for continuous learning, because, and I'll paraphrase by saying, because it seems to possibly be applicable not just to you as an athlete, you know, ex-football player, martial artist, but also as a business owner. So if you can give us the kind of comprehensive outlook on the theme of continuous learning.
Yeah. Well,
I asked that, sorry, one more time. I asked that because not many people mention that need for continuous learning. So it's interesting that you do. Yeah. Please.
Well, I think, especially when I went on my own, I knew that I needed a lot of mentors, and I knew I already had that before in the past. But it really kind of went to the forefront when I needed to align myself up with some good coaches. Having guys like Ricardo Laborio, Conan Silveira, Marco Stomata, Catel Kubis, Roger Kral, Dennis Kang, you know, the list goes on and on. They all have something to offer. I've always been the big believer that I don't have all the answers, but if I don't have all the answers, I will find the resources for it. And I won't hide it. That's the other thing. I won't hide it. You know, like I'm the believer that if, like, giving an example, and I do this all the time because it happens in my gym with my parents and the kids that I teach. I call it the uncle syndrome, which is you have a child, the uncle comes over, the father or the mother has been telling that child to do something for months on end. And then the uncle comes over to visit and says it one time and the kid changes like this. And it's just a different voice. So that's one of the big things for me, is that you need different voices, especially for students. When I bring all these coaches, it's not just for my benefit, but it's also for the benefit of the students, because I might not be getting to that particular student because the way I might say it or the way I approach it, whatever the case may be. But then I have another instructor comes in, and it doesn't have to be a high level guy. It could be one of my assistants, and they get through to the student. Man, that's very important. And then there's so many different ways of teaching. Like, look at the perfect example was, I don't know if you remember the story of Joe Rogan and the spinning kick with GSP. I don't know if you heard of that. John Danaher brought in Joe Rogan to teach GSP the spinning kick, because that's what Joe Rogan was known. You know, he's a black belt in Taekwondo, and that kick was amazing. And that's like a perfect example of bringing in someone from somewhere else that might contribute to the overall benefit of the school, to the system, to the curriculum. You got to continuously learn, because you might think, man, I have the best way to teach the cross. And then you bring in a boxing coach who has he's going to teach a cross, but he might have a different approach, and it revolutionized. Like, I get so excited. Like, I still do. And I could still feel it right now. How my mentor, Marco Zamata, will come over and he'll teach something I already know, but he'll do one minor adjustment and I go crazy. I'm like, oh my God, the floodgates just open, and I get excited all over again, just like I'm a white belt that just learned the most basic thing in the world. And I think you got to be like that. You have to have that enthusiasm, especially in the martial arts, especially now with the evolution. It's not like in the old days where it's like everybody was hoarding things, you know, like my secret techniques. There's no secret techniques in the world now. There's nothing. You can go online. You can learn anything that you want. What you do need is an in-person mentor to kind of guide you, you know. That's very important.
Now, you mentioned your mentor and your coach, Damata. Tell us a bit more about him. How would you describe him? And I've had the opportunity to meet him or interview him real quick. And he seems like a very, he's obviously a very serious person and very intense. And you see him as a coach too in the UFC, you know, standing there, and he seems like a very intense character. Does he ever smile, or is he?
Oh my God. He is one of the more caring guys that I know. Like, honestly, He is, I remember the interview he did with you. He said, if it's not perfect, it's not right. And that's pretty much kind of the motto that he uses in his teaching. And he cares so much of the product and the quality that's on the mat. And he's so passionate about it. He doesn't let anything slide. So that kind of rubbed off on me, you know. I'm the same way, you know. Man, if it's not perfect, it's not right. Because again, from when he comes up, or my other coaches come up, and they're like, "What the hell is that? What are you teaching? You represent me. I represent him. I need to make sure that the quality control and the quality assurance is always at the peak." So because he's so detail oriented, because he's so passionate and he loves so much, it rubbed off on the organization. So that kind of teaching style has now been infused into with my assistants, our coaching curriculum and whatnot. It's there.
He's got such a command of the space and of the room, just his presence alone and his standard of excellence clearly shows as a coach.
It's funny because the first time we met, he was on the mat teaching the pros, and it was Conan. And I don't know if you met Conan Silvera, but he's a mountain of a man. And Pahumpa, and he's the Pahumpa, who's a smaller stature. He's the one that scared the shit out of me. He was the one that I did not want to approach at the beginning. I'm like, this is an intense guy. He's on the ball and everything. And I told him that. I said, man, the first time I met you, I was so intimidated because you are commanding these monsters of men on the mat. And you're a person of a smaller stature. It was kind of intimidating. But once you get past that, the guy is, man, I mean, we were talking last night. We talk on a regular weekly basis about everything, about coaching, about techniques, about life, about family. He's got a huge, huge heart, and he's so passionate what he does.
And on the topic of your coach and your mentor, what, in your opinion, are some of the roles and responsibilities of coaches from what you've seen, even your approach?
Well, because I'm the owner and head coach of the club, I have to have different responsibilities. So like, that term of wearing many hats, as the club has grown, before COVID, we had a staff of 12 people. So I had, so, and again, so there's many things that I have to look at. I have to look at not only as the head coach and making sure that my head assistant coach is on the ball and making sure that everything is picked up, but also at the same time, I have part-timers, I have student instructors that are there to, hold pads and everything else. So I have to be meticulous on, again, that quality control. If it's not perfect, it's not right. So there's meetings, there's ways of coaching. So a lot of times, especially for the kids class, I'll be with the more advanced kids, but I'm overseeing the whole club. So I'll delegate that to my head assistant. He'll oversee. So there's a whole chain of command that has to be done. So that's on the head coaching side. And then the responsibility of a school owner is you got the operation side of it. You have the marketing side of it. You have the financing side of it. So you have that. And then you also have, you can't forget and that you're also training. I have to continuously train. So I have kind of set up my scheduling so I can take advantage of it, in the sense that my lunch classes are a lot of the advanced guys. So it gives me the opportunity to not only teach, but if I'm rolling with the guys or anything else, I have a bunch of blue belts or above that I can roll with and get at least my training, my fix in. And then my head assistant, Andrew, if we're covering something that I want to cover, we'll take some extra time together and cover some techniques. But it's like, it starts at any time, right? You're like, you're mopping the mat, and then all of a sudden you're like, hey, I was thinking of this and I tried this. And then you just an hour later, you just did an hour of training. We didn't realize. And the mop's still on the mat, So
what keeps you, I think you kind of answered it, but I'll ask you either way. What keeps you motivated as a martial artist and coach? Because you've been doing this now for well over 30 years or so, maybe even 40 years.
40 years.
Yeah. What keeps you motivated?
For me personally, myself, it's just the continuous learning, always wanting to better myself. Right now, I'm working on my black belt in Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and that won't end. That's a continuous learning. And then I'm just, for me, it's to bring back to the club. Honestly, if I'm improving, I can improve my students also. And I cannot go stale or stagnant, because then it's not going to grow everybody else. So I love it when I can share something with a student. It was kind of coincidental. Like we had Coach Roger Kral, striking coach out of ATT, January of last year. And I wanted him to work on calf kicks. And look what happened a few weeks ago.
Right.
So, I wanted his approach to it. Okay, how would you do inside calf kicks, outside calf kicks? How would you do it versus southpaw versus orthodox? How would you do it versus a closed stance? And then, we learn that. I film that. I absorb from it. I ask questions. I do privates with them. And this way I can learn and then practice it and master it and then bring it to the students, and I get feedback from my own instructors too, so.
Tell me about your students. What sort of feedback do they give you? Because it seems that, you've brought in you've exposed them to such high level coaching and from different perspectives. And what are some of the, what's some of the feedback you're getting from your students?
I mean, they appreciate it. And the other thing is that I don't hide. I think I tell them up front. Like when they join, they know who I am, in the sense that I'm not going to go and say, these are, I'm going to bring this instructor and I'm going to keep these techniques to myself. And I'm an open book. I don't in today's technology now, if I'm not going to be guiding, because I think now instructors are different. Like in the 70s, I remember like you'd race to get the book, right? And that was the technology at the time. And then VHS tapes, was the next technology, and then DVDs, and now everything's online, but you still need an in-person mentor. So I think the students know that I'm going to share everything, and they appreciate it. I try also when a guest instructor comes in, I don't want to show them something that is over their head. Do you know what I mean?
Of course. Yeah.
So coming back with Master Namada, for the first few years he was coming in, he was teaching the fundamentals. He was laying together the foundation. We weren't teaching like, Baron Bolo or, striking coaches coming in and creating, Superman punch combinations and all. No, let's work on the foundation of our students and that will grow it on itself. So I think they're very appreciative. And also I haven't told you this, but pre-COVID, we would do a retreat, training camp at ATT headquarters themselves. I bring students. Wow. And we usually did it on March break, because for them, their spring break is before or after ours. So we would go down and we'd be at ATT headquarters. We would schedule group privates with my coaches. They would have carte blanche and attend as many classes as they want at headquarters. So imagine that you're a white belt and you're going to this huge facility, and then you're on the mat, and then just steps away, you have Kimbo or, all these guys training, you're doing a Muay Thai class, and then you're partnered up with one of the fighters. You're like, it's mind blowing, but it's to expose the students to that kind of level. So to motivate them.
Very interesting. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's it.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting for students to have that sort of exposure to the professional stream, the elite level of mixed martial arts and different sports, because it's interesting at ATT, you guys have some, you've got some former high level Olympians teaching different sports, including a two-time judo Olympian, Harrison. She's training there. So I mean, like, damn, it's quite the exposure for anyone, quite frankly. What are some of the personal and professional challenges you've seen over the years as a business owner in this industry of combat sports pre-COVID? What are those challenges?
Well, the biggest challenge was when I went on my own. That was, that was a big thing, because you wanted to make sure that what we brought to the table at MAFA was going to be not only legitimate, but I'm a big believer in not having a questionable lineage. Like, just on the jiu-jitsu side of it, with Marco Stamata, Carlson Gracie, Marco Stamata, me. That's the lineage. It's not the guy of the guy of the guy of the guy. It's high level right away. Striking coaches like Roger Crawl, Mike Brown, all these guys. So that was the big challenge is one, bringing that legitimacy and making sure that quality always maintained. So I think that's one of the big challenges, always maintain that quality. The continuous learning, staying motivated, but that to me that comes natural. The growth of the club, I don't find it's a funny question, because I think other than that, I love what I do. I don't find it a challenge. It's like, oh, okay, this came up, just roll up the sleeve, pull up the bootstraps, and let's go. Let's get to work. Let's go to the grind. If you love what you do, it's I don't see it as a challenge. I see it as just another, bump in the road. Even the COVID thing, it's a different approach. It's a different bump in the road.
Right. No, and the reason why I asked that actually is due to this time we're all in with COVID-19 and this global pandemic, and how it's impacting, just about every sector, every business, and businesses have had to kind of, reinvent themselves to some extent, remodel, and for the fitness industry, which the martial arts are part of the fitness industry. It's taking quite a hit, generally speaking, here in Canada and other parts of the world, of course. So I'm asking because of that. And I know that people in your industry are obviously very passionate and they love what they do, because it's you wouldn't be in it if you didn't like it, I would imagine. So I guess where I'm going with this is, how has your gym shifted due to COVID-19? And how have you guys been able to continue teaching?
Well, one is to accept the reality and not kind of like, as an owner, like I had to, anyone that was negative about it. Like I have one friend, I mean, literally, I've spoken to him twice now since last year, and that's twice too much. I mean, the negativity that came from that conversation, I hung up the phone and it was like, oh my God, I can't talk to this person.
Wow.
Because it's, you have to, one, the challenge is to continuously stay positive as a school owner. Two is to make sure that you get the right people around you to consult you and to make sure that you put in the necessary systems to be successful. In our industry, there are consultants, business consultants, that will help you through it. There's also associations like WACO and the OBJJ that are there as PSOs to help you. Like if you're just going to, you know, put on the blinders and put your tinfoil hat and everything else and whatever thing you want to put on, it's gonna take the best of you. So the first thing for us was to accept the situation and say, okay, how can we maintain our students motivated? How do we put systems in place so that it doesn't feel as if, even if they're doing it from their living room or wherever in their basement, that it doesn't feel like they're away from us. So that was the first things. And then honestly, those two associations that I've mentioned, they really kind of are pioneers for the martial art industry right now, because they have a seat at the table at the province. They are talking on our behalf. They are making sure that the mandates, the systems that need to be in place so that we can stay open as martial arts schools are there, so that once I got that information and we had to go compliant with them, I mean, we weren't hiding anything. We contacted bylaw. We had them come in. They did our walkthrough. And again, I took it another level. Not only did we do a walkthrough video, it's on our Facebook page, but with social distancing, but the students could not come in. No one can walk into our club without going onto our app, checking in our attendance. And the app itself limits the number of people that could come in. So we always had the requirements that was mandated by our associations. And then we also, not only electronically, we also tracked it by paper, and we numbered every single square. There was no random whatsoever. Everything was from the moment you walked in. I felt like when I was building it, I felt like the soup Nazi in Seinfeld. Like literally, you know, you stand in, step and step and step and step. But this is the only way that you can build the confidence in the students. Because in Canada, there's families. It's not like downtown where you have more younger adults. The demographics in Canada is kids and families. So you gotta not only get all this stuff going, but you gotta demonstrate to the families that you've implemented a system that will keep their kids safe and themselves safe. So we did that. We have 2 floors. We're fortunate enough. So we open traffic via the back door, via the front door. And when we were open, I mean, we were full to the capacity that is required and mandated by the Ontario government. And then on top of that, on our virtual classes, like this week that just went by, we're averaging 40 to 50 people a night between 5 and 8 o'clock on Zoom classes between kids jiu-jitsu, kid MMA, Muay Thai kickboxing, and BJJ.
That's awesome. And can you tell us a little bit more about the app, why you decided to create one, and the approach you took in deploying it? Because I think that's pretty cool that, you know, a dojo has an app. I don't think many, correct me if I'm wrong, in Ottawa gets, you know, I don't know if many gyms have apps. But the bigger gyms have apps. How they use it might be different than the way we do. So we went with a third-party app first, and it had its limitation. And again, I'm trying to always improve. So then what we did is we went with another third party, and they already have their infrastructure. But what we did is within the app, it helped us with COVID because of how we can electronically track people. So if like there was a maximum attendance of 10 people, well, after 10 people booked, it locked out. You'd have to go to the next class, you know? So, and so that helped us out a lot. But then again, coming back to the different ways of a student can learn, you know, books, VHS and everything else. Now everything you can get on app, right? I mean, Marcelo Garcia has an app. You know, this is a world-renowned world champion, you know, right. He has an app. So what we wanted to do is add content to it. So we have right now over 300 technical videos and drills for our students. And every day we keep adding on.
So
Are you tracking analytics on what sort of content is being consumed by students? Like, do you
yeah,
know? Oh, you do. Okay, interesting.
I know absolutely everything. How many people have viewed this video?
Yeah.
Everything is, all the analytics are there.
Out of curiosity, what's the most popular technique within the context of grappling? That just on the analytics, if you, sorry, I'm asking a
Anything that
very specific question.
anything that I put in the advanced curriculum right now is popular.
Okay.
So what I try to do is every week we do something for the kids, we do something for the adults, and then both disciplines, the Muay Thai kickboxing as well as the jiu-jitsu, so that they have content. Because in these days, in COVID, they need to have motivation. It's not only just the Zoom.
Right.
You know, and the Zoom classes that we do are fully interactive. So there's multiple coaches going on. It's not just me in front of a camera and I'm just doing whatever we have planned. There's another coach watching the kids do their technique, and there's more coaches. So then what happens is that if, let's say, we're doing jab, cross, rear kick as an example, then I'm teaching and showing the technique, but the monitor of the guy, he's watching and saying, "Oh, John, you're dropping your right hand, you're dropping your left hand." So it feels and it interacts just as if they're in class. So that's why our attendance has been very high. I mean, we've lost students. I mean, if someone tells you they haven't lost students during COVID, they're lying. I mean,
so you really deployed kind of like a user experience, if I could use that term, that's engaging for the students. And you've provided a lot of content up front for them to review and stay on top of it. Clearly, you have a system in place, and you know what I mean. And I don't know if that's the case for other gyms, because situation seems rather extremely challenging, if I can say, and for any business in this sort of global pandemic. If I can ask the big question moving forward in terms of, like, from what you've seen over the last year, how do you think this whole pandemic is going to impact your industry moving forward? Like, let's say a year from now, well, what would you forecast,
I think
see happening?
I think there's going to be like two scenarios that I can see happening. One is there's going to be a big influx of all the students that haven't, that left, that want to come back. Some people, they just want to train with a person and be in person, and you can't fault them for that. The other might be someone who just doesn't feel comfortable with, it doesn't matter how many safety measures. I mean, if everybody became a bubble boy, I mean, you just don't feel comfortable. So once these things go back to normal, I think there's going to be a big influx in our industry, especially, I mean, the parents. I mean, we've done so much for the parents during COVID. We've done not only all those technical videos, but we've done technical videos on how to hold pads. We've sold equipment at cost, grappling dummies at cost, at focus mitts at cost, done technical videos on how to use these tools to keep their kids motivated. So I think there's going to be a really big influx of parents, just like, I think it'll be like, I don't want to joke about it, but like drive by, throw your kid at the door kind of thing, just there you go, get them out of here. Because there's going to be a big health concern. A lot of people are going to self-evaluate themselves and say, man, I put on a lot of weight, or I'm mentally depressed, or, especially kids that have been isolated, what's that on their confidence? How do they feel? All these factors come in, and I think the martial art industry is really good and well positioned to kind of hit on all those needs. I mean, over the years, all martial arts schools, all the taglines, we teach discipline, we teach focus, we teach all these things. Now it's a time to hammer them home and to demonstrate to the families that, and to the people that, martial arts really bring this to the table.
That's really interesting. And I think it also goes to even martial artists who are you know, in their 50s, 60s, and you know what I mean? Because you have all different sort of profiles and demographics of people who train and who want to try, you know, a new experience. And I think it'll be interesting to see the crazy influx. I mean, for some sports like grappling based sports, as you know more than I, it's you need that. You need that body, you know, you need to, you know, and not just one, but a whole variety of different sizes and whatnot to train. So it'll be really interesting to see moving forward how things go. Question in terms of like, I think you were abroad when this whole situation happened. If you wanted this situation being the
yeah. So again,
when it started, I should say.
Yeah. So literally the week where everything started just exploding, my wife is from Colombia. So March break, we usually went, if we didn't go to Florida to train, we go and visit my in-laws in Colombia. And we usually go to Cartagena. It's like a merger of Miami.
It's a UNESCO World, I think it's been designated UNESCO World Heritage Site, is it not? It's like Cartagena is like one of the most spectacular visual places in the world. It's
incredible because you have these two parts of the city. One part looks like Miami Beach, and the other part looks like Spain within a walled fortress. So that was the crazy part, because we decided this time when we went down and it was COVID that we weren't going to stay in the in-laws, the Miami Beach side of things. We stayed in the walled city, and I love staying in the walled city because it's just gorgeous. It's something else. And so the first 3 days we got there, there was one case in all of Colombia, and it was in Bogota. And if you had to drive there, it'd be going like 12 hours through the mountains. So there was not a big worry. So the first three days, there was no restrictions. And then overnight, they announced curfew. So you went from, full area to like crickets by 6 o'clock. And it was crazy because I'm not Colombian, I'm a gringo. So when you walk around at 6 o'clock getting to your hotel, the police are walking around and trying to stop anyone that looks like me. And then you would literally have to bribe them so you don't go to jail. Wow. But I'm fortunate enough, I speak a little bit of Spanish, and my wife is from Colombia, so they left us alone. But we saw it quite often, you know. So we went from 3 days of that to after 2 days, they went full city lockdown where you wouldn't even be able to leave your hotel. Wow. So by then, people were just leaving the city as fast as possible. So we went from a boutique hotel, which was full, to only us. And we had a full staff. So we were fortunate enough that we had that. But that also, I knew that this was coming down. I had my laptop, I had my phone. I was already contacting my staff and contacting my mentors and say, okay, when we get back, because we knew we had to stay 2 weeks in quarantine. So as we were coming back, I had already put in the necessary infrastructure of the systems we're going to implement. And then for the first 2 weeks with my stepson, when we taught in the basement, the lessons, the Zoom lessons, I created home lessons for the students. I created technical contests for the students. I did all these imaginative things to kind of drum up the excitement for the Zoom classes. But it was completely different because I've never been exposed to that. Like I don't know how the people in Quebec are going into curfew, like I've never seen that before. So it was scary a little bit, but what was even more worry for us was we went with air transit. So all the planes that were scheduled to leave were like dropping like flies. So we were always afraid that we were going to get kicked out. Imagine that. COVID, you have to get back to your home country to get your business drummed up for this, to not lose students, to do all that. It was like, we were fortunate enough. What happened was Air Transit dropped all the flights to Montreal except ours. And then they upgraded to the largest plane that they could put. So imagine this, we had our flight left, I think it was 2. We got there at 7 in the morning.
Wow.
And there was a lineup already. And everybody was wearing masks and there was a lot of panic. And then think about it. You don't have any information on this virus and everyone's worried. You're wearing masks. You've never wore a mask in a plane. And, you know, there was a lot of panic. So by the time we got back and got off the plane, we got in our car and head straight to home. We had fortunately enough, we have good friends to, you know, get our groceries and, you know, that was it.
Man, that sounds incredible. That's just straight out of some you know, crazy movie. You know, when you're painting it that way with all that panic and anxiety in the air of you know, this uncertainty and I mean we're still technically obviously in this pandemic and who knows where it's headed. But, you know, it's good that you guys, that you and the family were able to come back to the country and that the business, you know, you had a contingency plan and you deployed that. So that's brilliant. Just wanted to move on a little bit. I know that you spoke, we spoke before this interview and you had mentioned something in regards to, I don't know if you want to talk about it or not, but in regards to a new program that you'll be bringing in to your school. Tell us a little bit about it.
So again, to always continue growing and expanding MAFA and the organization. So I'm always watching everything all the time. And you go to jiu-jitsu tournaments and you do judo. So one of the things is you go to the jiu-jitsu tournament and I'm there and I've done wrestling. So I like takedowns. I like to, you know, I've done judo, I've done wrestling. So I like to do takedowns. And one of the more frustrating things that I see is a lot of people pulling guard. And I'm like, okay, is it because of a lack of quality? I don't think so. There's some really good coaches in the area. So I don't think it's that. So I didn't want to have that as an excuse. So part of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, there's some judo in there. You know, some Ippon Seoinage, some Ichimata, some Osotogares, whatever. So I didn't want to limit my students. So what we did is I started researching. And again, I wanted to, if I'm going to start a relationship, I'm going to start it the right way. So I actually contacted Judo Canada. And I said, do you have a black belt that could come, a legitimate, good instructor? Because sometimes not all athletes are the best instructors. So a good instructor and bring him in and teach. They never got back to me. I called local judo schools. You know, oh, we'll think about it. I'm like, okay. So obviously in this community, we're not going to help each other. So in this case, I'm going to go beyond. And if I'm going to go beyond, I'm going to get the best I can get. So I contacted Jimmy Pedro, judo. And as you know, world-class Olympian, Travis Stevens, he's worked with Ronda Rousey. He's worked with a high-level judokas out there. And I contacted his program director and I said, look, I want to bring legitimate judo and a legitimate judo curriculum to supplement our Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So Riley, who is the program director there, we went back and forth. And then I put it on the back burner because other stuff in life was going on and you don't want to take too much and lose out on that quality. So a few months went by and I contacted him again. I said, hey, are we still good for this? And he's like, yeah. So this year was last year, before COVID was the first time he came down and he started teaching it from the judo approach so that we can round things out, you know, so that, again, you have the jiu-jitsu approach, you have the judo approach, you know, you have different opinions. And I don't care if it's the jiu-jitsu way or the judo way or the sambo way. If one way can teach you the best way to how to do, let's say I've been talking about Ichimata, then great. Then my goal as a head instructor and school owner has been achieved. The student learns. So we're launched pre-COVID a program that is going to bring Junipero Judo to Canada, and we'll be the only one.
That's pretty cool, man. I mean, it's remarkable, and I think it's going to expose students to some a great program and an incredible coach. He's a two-time Olympian and I think three-time world champion.
And I'm not cutting corners. I'm going to wear a white belt like everybody else. I don't care. And do it the right way. And Riley and Sensei Pedro will oversee it. And, you know, we're going to do it the right way.
That's awesome, man. It's part of that continuous learning. And it's interesting too, because even your coach, the Mara, I remember when I saw a bit of his teaching at your dojo. And I remember he was drilling throws like from the get-go. And adamantly he was, you know, so it's interesting because I think your students must they must have an understanding of the tachiwaza aspect. That's the stand-up throwing technique. But now it's going to get even more interesting because they're going to get a judo experience and an outlook on it. Because of course judo is a standalone international sport, no pun intended, standalone. It's also got a ground game in Iwaza, so it's very complementary for anybody to learn. And I think there's a value in learning, as you mentioned, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, judo, sambo, freestyle, Greco, whatever, right? It's part of the game, always adding to it. One last question for you. I've really enjoyed this conversation, Stephane. I don't want to take up more of your time, but we've touched on all sorts of really interesting topics. And you kind of answered this question, but I'll ask you either way because you've had a quite the list of influences as far as coaches and styles. Who's been the most influential person in your martial arts development?
The most influence has been my mentor, Marcos Zamata. I mean, he put in that mindset that in the way we run our school, but there's him, there's Master Laborio, like every mentor I have, I still in contact with them. Most of them I have, and then they all contribute something, you know. Sometimes you know, it's just, you know, I have a business mentor, and I talk to him, and he's like, sometimes it's just a call to slap me around, you know, hey, what are you doing? You know, so you need mentors and whatnot. So, you know, Marcos Zamata, Ricardo Laborio. I mean, I spent, you know, over 15 years with the Pat Note organization. They have so many mentors there, so many people, Cijo himself and his sons and everybody else. I mean, those are people that, you know, you cannot deny the contribution that they've done for us. And at the same time, you know, there's Dennis Kang, you know, I mean, he launched the program. One of my good friends who's become a very good friend is Cole Miller, you know. Cole comes down or comes up quite often, and we talk on a regular basis. And he runs an ATT school too. So we're exchanging. It's not just from the point of view of as a martial artist, but it's also from a point of view is like, hey, how do you run this, or how do you do this? And you could bounce ideas off of. Riley is something that you know, with the Pedro Judos that we're going to be implementing. So all these people have throughout the year contributed a lot, not a lot, but have contributed to something. So
fascinating, man. Tell us, where can we find your gym online if people have any questions? You know,
it's online. It's mmafa.ca. We are
what does it stand for? Tell us what it stands for.
Mixed Martial Arts and Fitness Academy. It's the buffed out Tony the Tiger. If you see the logo, a lot of people wondered why I picked a tiger. There was a whole meaning behind it. You know, I left the dragon, and the yin and yang is the dragon and the tiger. So that was left, and then I chose the tiger also because my Chinese astrology is the dog, and the tiger and the dog go together. And I wanted something that was kind of like family oriented and approachable. We do have another logo that is for the fight team, which is really cool, but MMAFA.ca, we're the only American Top Team affiliate school or facility in all of Canada. So, yeah.
Well, again, thank you very much for your time. This has been a really, really interesting conversation, and I'm happy to finally be able to talk. And as I mentioned before, you know, I haven't had that opportunity, and I'm glad to have had it now. And who knows, maybe I'll interview you again, since you have so many interesting things going on. So, you know, keep in touch and stay safe.
Yes, you too. And thank you so much for doing this. Thank you.